Who was here, by the way, for the last one? We sort of do these every month. I'm curious to see how many were here for the last one. It was Richard's first, actually, wasn't it? Was it your first?
It was my first. Since then, I've done one of our strengths discovery workshops.
Yeah.
Convenient little plug every Tuesday at 12 o'clock, usually from one of our in-house consultants, occasionally from me. We'd be running you through the basics of what strengths are and how to discover a personal strength.
And you're back today by popular demand.
Yes. Yes. And as I was saying, Ant and Dick. So you've got the best of Ant and Dick and Dick and Dom.
That is so true with your humour as well.
Yeah.
And on that joyful note, let's kick off. Let's kick off, shall we? Thank you for all of those who are waiting patiently there for a few minutes. We've sort of still got people joining, so if you are joining as you're going through this, welcome. You can always catch the recording if not, if you missed the beginning. But welcome, everyone. We're going to be talking today about unlocking the potential of hybrid teams. We'll cover quite a bit. We should be done in around half an hour, 45 minutes, but it really does depend on how many questions you put in, and please feel free. This is your time. This is time for you. We put these on, as I said, every month. So if you equally want to ask loads of questions and that prompts us to put on a different topic for next time, that's really helpful and great. So these times are for you. You're joined here by Anthony. So my name is Anthony, and I will be hosting alongside Richard, who's already kind of given a bit of an introduction. But I'm part of the consulting team here at Bailey and French. Please find us on LinkedIn and drop us a note if you have anything after the session as well. But yeah, hi Richard, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be back. I love a chance to do some public speaking, as much as you can public speak to your laptop, hoping all of you are listening. Yeah, really grateful to be here and have everyone's attention for the next 30 minutes or so.
Fantastic. Yeah, and as we said before, but just in case you didn't get it, pen and paper is great. There's going to be some reflective activities. There's going to be some engagement in the questions box. So just make sure you know where everything is and it's all working. Hopefully you can all hear us and we're not just talking to ourselves. Let's crack on. So today's hybrid world, I don't think it's a mystery. Technology and circumstance has kind of created this opportunity for us. That isn't new. I think if you're waking up today thinking, what is the hybrid world of working, you may have missed a few HBR articles and the rest of it. So I'm not going to cover necessarily what hybrid is, but just to say, we know more now about the effects and the impact of hybrid working than ever before. We know, for example, that most people are adopting sort of a 2-3 days in the office, 2-3 days in a remote location. Places like Greece and Portugal actually really common places for people to up and move at the moment in Europe. And I know US, definitely outside of Florida and the classic California states, moving to Texas and things like that. So there's a real kind of opportunity of people moving to more hybrid models. Not everyone, of course. There are some roles where hybrid isn't an opportunity. But Google are kind of also flagshipping, they've apparently done loads of research and looking at if you spend 60% of your time in the office, 20% in sort of pop-up locations and remote locations that are maybe something in between your home and an office. So whether that's on a client site or a coffee shop or out and about meeting people, and then 20% kind of deep focus work when you're working from home. That seems to be how you get the best from your people. Obviously, again, it depends on the job that you do. But given kind of people's situation around flexibility, saving money, work-life balance, these are some of the real key reasons that people are moving towards a more hybrid way of working. It's part of your attraction and retention strategy, I'm sure. We will cover this a little bit more, but interestingly, senior leaders prefer hybrid working than management. That's an interesting one to think about. And also, what's the impact on inclusion? Also really important to consider, and these are some of the things that we'll touch on throughout this. But hopefully when you walk away from this session today in the next 30 minutes or so, we want you to be thinking, right, I've got a real understanding of what I need to do now. Now I know a little bit more about the impact of hybrid working and what it means for me and my team. Here are some real clear actions that I can go and take away either because I'm an individual contributor to that team, either I'm leading a team, or maybe I'm leading an organization, department, etc. So we'll try and cover all bases, but as I say, put some questions into the chat as we go. Richard, I'll sort of hand over to you here.
Yeah, so this is going to be our first activity. We'll have a couple going through, and it would be really great to hear from you within the questions box, so we can share it, we can discuss it. If for any reason you don't want to share or are unable, please do write it down in your notebook or on a notes app. And if you can't write it down, we do understand. Just try and formulate the question in your head, really think it, really give your time to work this through. So how does hybrid work enable you to do and be your best? So how does hybrid work enable you to do and be your best? So we had a lot of statistics there about people wanting hybrid work, how it benefits people. But how do you, on a unique level, benefit from it? How can you be your best? Now, for me, and I'm sure there's quite a lot of parents here listening, having hybrid work means that you do not have to stress in the same way about childcare. It means that you can get there, picking up your little one, you can attend their events, and it doesn't eat into your day because you're at home, you're around the corner. Brilliant. So we've got some coming in now. Including, by the looks of it, lots of people talking about productivity. So this is something that comes up a lot. We obviously want people to be more productive in their day-to-day work, but where are you going to be most productive? Is that going to be in the office where people are coming over to you and distracting you? Or is that going to be at home when you're working on that document, that presentation, maybe that proposal? Do you need to be alone to work that, to really get your head down? Here we have getting stuff done around the house. I know that sounds simple, but just being able to spend your lunch break putting that wash on, do a bit of cleaning. That means you're not having to do it on the weekend. That means you get free time back. That's amazing. That's a really great thing to do. Yep, connecting with your local community. That's great. So I used to commute into London, as we spoke about before. And the days I got to work from home were the days I actually felt like I was living in Brighton. That I wasn't just living in some nameless suburb. I was actually living in the community. Yeah, focusing on specific work. How about you, Ant? You don't do that many days from home, but what do you benefit from?
Yeah, well, I was just reading one of them. Can drink 5 coffees in 3 hours and then not annoying anyone around me. I think that is definitely me when I work from home. Thanks, Rachel. And having meaningful private one-to-ones. I think that's really important. You know, choosing what work you're doing.
Yeah.
There's some real great comments in here that I really recognise. Yeah.
Privacy's come up a few times in there. You can have those conversations without trying to find a little meeting room, or you can nip off to the doctors, usually without anyone knowing, so you don't have to explain where you're popping off with people who are just being interested, but maybe you don't want to speak about them. Increased productivity, yeah, that's coming up all the time on there. And not having to commute, so you get that time back. Now you might be working a little bit more, or you might spend that time going on a walk, or going to the gym, or getting some housework, or just lying in. Oh, and I love the last one that's just come up. Thank you, Hazel. Your pets are happier. That's a really great thing. So we're talking about a lot of positivities here. Extra sleep. Yes, brilliant, Gemma. But it's not all positive with hybrid working. Everyone wants it. There are a lot of benefits to it. But on to the next activity. So pop this into the questions box again. We want to hear from you, or write it down, or hold it in your head, however you're working. When does hybrid working stifle your brilliance? When does hybrid working stifle your brilliance? So we talked about the benefits of hybrid working. There's commute, more productivity, more privacy, but it can get in the way as well, can't it? I'm sure we've all gone through it. Yep, Gemma, not being able to speak to your colleagues. Now, this is, for me, probably the biggest one. I never work alone. I'm always working part of the team. I'm working with consultants. I'm working with our associates. I'm working with the program managers. And sometimes you don't want to be typing a message. Sometimes you actually just want to be talking to someone. not even just those water cooler moments we keep hearing about. You want to actually be talking to someone working in a group, and I would say it makes the work harder. Lack of human interaction. So I've definitely been speaking to a client about this. Loneliness you can get in a hybrid team. That's a real issue. And how do we address loneliness when you are working at home? Yep, losing energy. Some people just cannot keep themselves motivated at home. What else have we got coming up there? Yes, you are meant to put your answers in the question box. That's where we want it. That's where we're reading them out from. So yes, you're doing exactly the right there. Yeah, collaboration when you're working under tight deadlines.
Keeping everyone
together. Yeah, so if you're all working on a proposal together as a group rather than an individual, sometimes you need everyone there. So you're giving each other momentum. You're keeping it going.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Because you want to get everyone in a room and feel energized, and that's really difficult when proximities. And of course, this isn't a new thing. We've had many a hybrid team in a sense, or remote team. If you're working with colleagues all over the world, if you're part of a global brand, that can often happen. It's a real challenge.
Yeah, not seeing people either. For the professional wise, you need their expertise, you need to have a chat with them, you need to work with them. But then there's that personal level as well. Like we are, I was going to say pack animals. Is that the right term? And you'll probably have to correct me on that. But we like human interaction. Even those who of us who are maybe a little bit more introverted, it's still sometimes really good to be around people, even if you're not necessarily getting your energy from those interactions. It can be really good. Oh, and blurred lines. Yeah, we haven't even discussed that. Suddenly, you're working all day, so you're not just doing your hours. You're doing a bit in the evening as well because your laptop's there. It's in the same room that you're eating your dinner, or it's in your spare room, but it's still there. Suddenly, work and home become blurred lines.
Yeah, it's so true. It is so true. And we're sort of touching on some of the things that I've kind of looked at in terms of the research, which is really interesting. And thank you everyone who's putting comments in. It's really great to hear your thoughts because there is loads there. And what we'll do, because there is so many, and we're not getting through all of them, is maybe just we'll put it on LinkedIn, or we'll kind of write a bit of a theme and a summary. So if you feel like we're not getting to you, apologies. There's loads coming in, which is fantastic, and we'll make sure that we answer it at some point. It's really great to have your thoughts. Thank you. So there's loads of research on this, and actually, funnily enough, the research focuses a lot around some of the negatives as much as it does the positives, which I suppose is quite important. But one of the biggest, I wanted to pull out some of the themes. So the 5C challenges was one that the HBR kind of put in recently. So looking at those communications, connections, and the creativity. Impact on culture is not one that's actually come up that much in the chat box. I think we were talking more about how it affects you, but when we talk about collectives, how does that impact a group of people? And funny enough, hybrid working does amplify in-group versus out-group behavior and siloed working. So if you're trying to create that new team or get people together, we've obviously seen a lot of retention, a lot of people moving. Sorry, not retention, the opposite of retention. A lot of people moving roles, new teams coming together. That's going to be really quite impactful if you're trying to get that cohesion. Also, negativity bias. Those of you who don't know what negativity bias is, just very quickly, it's the fact that human beings take note of the negative and feel the negative more deeply than maybe the positive. So actually you tend to focus on things that are going wrong rather than things that are going right. If any of you have kind of had a school report for one of your children recently, you know that when you get the report and there's all A's apart from the C, you focus on the C typically. That's negativity bias, and that is massively kind of impacted when there's greater proximity. So when you see people less, when there is greater distance between you and that person, negativity bias tends to get a lot stronger. We've all heard of quiet quitting. That is also a thing, but there's also kind of quiet stewing. That kind of sat behind your laptop being frustrated and not having that difficult or potentially honest conversation that you need to have, and just sort of sitting there and getting more and more and more frustrated. That is a real thing. That's negativity bias, and that's a real challenge for people, and it is potentially causing, or one of the key levers to why people are leaving your organization. And it also breeds this kind of I don't belong, which can have a real negative impact on others. So although it's just one person, actually the impact on the culture can be quite impactful. One of the key things as well is that managers have less visibility, and there is a real big debate around this, around managers' mindset and trust, and how we can move to a more outcomes-based performance kind of management. And we need clear objectives, we need technology to track and measure, and we need kind of more deep human connection to build that trust. But if you don't have some of those clear outcomes or those technologies in place, hybrid working can be really, really difficult. Also, it's just new. And I know some of you have been working in these remote environments maybe for a long time, but it's tough, it's change. And there's some brilliant research from Gartner coming out that because of managers and leaders being so overworked at the moment, and everyone to a certain degree being overworked, these new habits, these new skills that are required to dealing with more hybrid working is really tough. It's really difficult. And also, most of our L&D practice right now is focusing on individuals rather than getting teams to work collectively in hybrid environments. So there's some interesting things coming out. And we asked a question earlier, is it harder for management than senior leadership? Well, what the research suggests is that senior leaders who focus on vision and they focus on engaging people, maybe more one-to-one conversations and a little bit kind of a different way of stakeholder management and influencing, whereas managers are focused on performance and reports and outcomes. Yes, it probably is more challenging and more difficult for a manager than it is a leader. The debate of whether a leader and a manager is a different thing altogether is a different thing. I think if the point is, if you're focusing on performance and reports, that is more challenging than maybe setting the vision and doing those other leadership things. So what do we do? How do we create a bit of a more sustainable, longer term kind of hybrid way of working? And whose responsibility is it? I mean, according to Maxwell and his numerous number of books, everyone is a leader in their own way. And I think that's really important. How many of you have taken steps, if you are working in a hybrid environment, to not just improve your own performance and productivity and well-being when you're working hybrid, but actually impacting and making the environment inclusive of others as well? If you're in HR and L&D, probably the answer is yes. You probably think about that all the time at the moment. But has anyone kind of got any thoughts or actions or little tips that they've been trying out recently with their teams? Has anyone been taking ownership? What have people been doing? Put some thoughts in the questions box. Love to hear what you've been up to.
I'm sure some of you are really taking responsibility of this within your organizations as well. So it would be really nice to hear, particularly Dawn, who was mentioning a lot about the young people as well, and how hybrid can affect them. So what are you doing to help yourself and to really make a difference for them as well? Yeah, using video as much as possible. Putting your camera on, sometimes that helps you and them, helps with that human connection. Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, and checking in. And there's always that of checking in twice. Are you okay? Sure you're okay? Sometimes it really helps when you've got a team member like we've had before and still do, where you've had them based in a different town to you. You're all in the office 4 times a week, maybe more. They're on their own. Checking in with them. Yeah. Optional coffee drop-ins.
Yeah, don't force them,
because people hate those and they end up becoming resentful of them. But having an optional one, we sometimes do it before our Monday morning check-in. Someone wants to join early, we all join early, 5-10 minutes. You can actually have a chat.
I think there's loads of little kind of tips and tricks, right? When we're looking, and there's thank you for everyone who's putting comments into the questions box. I think the thing that we're trying to get to here, and what's really interesting when you start to look at the research, is the stuff that's under the surface, the more sort of the less superficial stuff. So yes, we know we need to connect more. We know we need to have stronger wellbeing support in place. But actually, fundamentally, the way that people work needs to change. And that literally means how you run meetings, how you interact as a team, the knowledge that you have of your team members. The world of work has shifted incredibly, and I have no idea what this is going to look like with the metaverse and things like that. There's some amazing conversations about what that's going to bring to hybrid working. But when we think about some of the actions and the activities, there is actually some really interesting things. So we've already talked about what have you done as an individual within the team, and what are you taking kind of some ownership for. The two most important things that you can do. So when you take and strip back all of the research, when you strip back all of the data that is coming through for how to make hybrid working work for you and for your team and for your department, if you can do these two things really well, you will go far. And I'll add a caveat to that at the end. But for now, what do we think we mean when we say human and flow? What do people think that we mean by these two things? And if you've attended previous webinars, now's your time to shine.
The flow on the right hand side there, a murmuration, which is just, you see them quite often around the old pier at Brighton. Absolutely beautiful. All those birds flying together in the same pattern without one single one leading it. Gives you a little bit of a hint towards flow if you haven't come across it before.
Yeah, thank you for the comments coming through as well. Flow, peak working, and time flying by. Yeah, being authentic. Kirsty, great one there.
Yeah, and authenticity and flow. You know what you're talking about. That's great. Or you know what we're talking about.
Have people seen the slides before we've?
Yes. Synergy within the team, leveraging talent. Yes, Julie, perfect.
We are all human. That is true. I think. I speak to some people sometimes and I do wonder. No, of course, we're all human. We're all human.
Being real, authentic, empowering people. I love empowering people. That is such a, particularly as a leader, such a great thing to do.
Yeah, right. There's loads of comments coming through. So what I mean when we were putting these together, and when you look at the research around what style of leadership and management is really effective right now, when you look at how teams can collaborate and communicate and be more agile, these are all things that are having huge impacts on our retention, on our productivity, on our operational performance as organizations. For some people, it's a case of survival. We've got supply chains that are breaking and falling apart. We've got, businesses that are really struggling to hire. So attraction is critical if they're to survive and to kind of combat some of the cost of business and cost of living crises that are happening. There's loads of these business reasons why these two things are really important, but human is about creating that really authentic and inclusive, more deeply connected kind of organization and team specifically. Organization is sometimes too big to think about. The biggest impact of engagement is the team. It's something like 70%, 73% or something of engagement is impacted by your team and your manager, right? And the relationship that you have between them. So creating that human feel to your team is critical to your organization. Role modeling those things as well is really vital. And when you're not role modeling them, maybe showing some vulnerability and sharing with people how you're on that journey together as an individual and as a team. Flow is a lot more specific. So flow is a lot more specific, and I'll come on to that in a second so you can see it. Thank you for the questions that are coming through. And also, just as a reminder, we'll open everything up at the end of the webinar. If you want to talk and ask questions, you're on mute at the moment. So this is exactly what we're talking about here. So we're talking about helping people to explore what authenticity means at work, encouraging curious inclusivity, encouraging people, for example, to, hey, what does Diwali mean? What is that experience that you're going through right now? Hey, Richard, you've got children. What's it like bringing kids to work every day and then bringing your best self and jumping on a webinar when you're tired? These things are really difficult, right? It's really important that we build and create the mindset within teams, because again, teams are better than organizations, because organizations are harder to control. They're harder to influence. They're big entities potentially. And if you're kind of calling from a slightly a smaller organization, then great. Your team maybe is a bit more impactful. But role modeling at all levels, as we've said, this isn't just something that your leaders do and managers do. We're getting a lot of kind of questions at the moment around leadership and management development, and what are you doing around other areas? This should be part of onboarding. This should be part of how everyone interacts every day. Flow, as I mentioned, is a little bit more intentional. It's a little bit more intentional. These are specific behaviors that you as a team can do to find, and Chloe, you were right on your comment earlier. Flow is when you're finding that time where things are flowing by. You feel in the zone. Things feel easy because you're playing to your strengths. It's maybe a little bit taxing, a little bit challenging, but that's okay because you're feeling good, you're feeling energized, and time is flying by. So experience that as a team can be really challenging. And if you want to hear more about that, we ran a webinar last month or the month before. We can send you the recording if you want to know more about flow more specifically. But there are three kind of key components, and celebrating unique individuals and their unique contributions. So first of all, finding out what are the unique contributions and unique experiences, knowledge, skills, strengths that people bring to your team. And then kind of aligning that and realigning that positively to a challenge or a focus. And that might be a 2-year objective and a plan. It might be, what are we going to focus on this week? Or how are we going to get this project over the line? And also thinking about, well, when that plan falls apart, how are we going to pick each other up? Who in the team has the relationship building strengths to go and take people for coffee? Who has the critical thinking strength to rebuild a new plan and kind of really critique what could go wrong and try and mitigate those risks before they happen. And then also finally, and this is a really important one, we're talking a lot here about trust and building a culture of respect and a human experience. Strengths-based praise, so praising people for the things that they love doing and spotting when they light up, is a really quick and easy way for your team to feel connected on a more deep level. Having that curiosity, as I say, around your strengths and the experience that you're having, but understanding on what platforms people want to engage. I've spoken to many people and I've caught myself out. You speak to people on the phone and they're a bit closed. Well, that felt a bit awkward. That didn't feel like I was connecting very well. Jump on a Teams. This person's definitely not connecting with me here. And then you go and meet face to face and they light up. People have different platforms. People are their best self and can do their best work in different ways and on different platforms. So the curiosity to ask questions, to figure that out as quickly as possible within your teams is vital. I'm talking here for a lot and there's been a load of questions coming in, so I'll pause for air. Richard, what are you thinking?
Well, a couple of things. Firstly, I would like to assure people that I don't bring my son to work. I think you misspoke. You said bring your son to work and then go to work. I think you meant bring your son to nursery and then go to work.
I did.
I certainly not bring my son into work. I would get work done.
That would be cool. That would be great.
And I certainly don't put him to work. He has a very fun day in nursery, doing baby yoga and such things. But yes, no, I think you touched on everything there. It all comes back to obviously being unique, being strengths. So going to throw in another plug. If strengths are something that you haven't explored before, perhaps they are something that you're interested in, or maybe you just want a refresher, come and join our free weekly strength sessions every Tuesday at 12 o'clock. We'll talk you through the basics of strengths, and that's the foundations of things like flow. So when you're using your strengths, that's when you're getting into that stage of flow. And we'll help you discover some unique strengths and even your work or professional strengths as well, and how to maybe start utilizing those and get yourself into that state of flow.
Yeah, fantastic. And that did make me laugh. Sorry,
Yes.
slip of words.
No, not at all, not at all. Just as long as everyone doesn't think that I'm bringing my son in and putting a headset on him and getting him to do something.
Oh dear, the irony of us talking about hybrid working and miscommunications. I mean,
Yes.
it's almost like we planned it.
Yes.
All these things, I can imagine you're sat there going, we already talk about all these. We're already doing these, but our leaders are not engaging, or people don't want to do this stuff, or they find it difficult, and we've tried it and we've added it into our hashtag lead program, or we've added it to our new leadership program that's kicking off in January. What we are finding is we've had 3 years to try this, and a lot of people have been putting these into leadership programs and it's not working. So it's worth thinking about why is that not working, and the way that you practice these skills is vital. Right, so we find here at Bailey and French the importance of creating some knowledge, some materials, things like these webinars, things that are easily accessible to everyone, whether it's quick bite-sized videos, things on LinkedIn, whether you've got a learning platform, ways to build knowledge around, for example, authenticity. What does it really truly mean to be authentic at work? There's lots of misconceptions that might surround those topics. Really help people to go on that journey, but give them space to do that. Gartner, as I said earlier, 70% of managers are so overwhelmed that they know what to do, but 14% say they actually action it because they're so busy. So that's a huge number of people going, yeah, we know, you've told us this before, but helping them to do it and to unpick their blockers, the skill building platforms. So actually taking time away from their current work and connecting with peers, connecting with people and going, well, we know this authenticity thing, but how have you been doing it? Because it's not been working for me. I find this really difficult. We need to invest more time into those kind of interconnected learning experiences for people, because some of these concepts may be new to you, some of them won't be, but certainly the managers and leaders' ability and the team leaders' ability to bring this to life is really difficult. And as I said earlier, there's also people who aren't getting the help and support because they're not managers and leaders, and they're part of a team and they have a huge impact on team engagement and performance. So it's worth thinking about how as much as anything. But Richard, you've kind of want to take this one.
Yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of talking to you at the moment, and hopefully you found that really useful, really looking at things behind it. But let's put some things back out to you. We always like to have a takeaway, call to action, something that you can take away effectively from this webinar and start working. So pop it in the questions box if you'd like to share. But firstly, maybe write it down on a piece of paper, on your phone, on a notes app, something that you're going to be able to keep after this so you can look at that. So what are my top takeaways from this webinar? So what are you going to take away from this? For me, I think looking through this is that we can expect a lot from our leaders. We can do a lot as a leader for hybrid teams, but there is a personal side to it as well. What you need people to also take action over, making sure that they make hybrid teams work no matter the level. Also, what role do I play in making this change happen? So we're talking about there needs to be change. We're talking about leaders knowing there needs to be change, even knowing how to do it, but just not having enough time, maybe being burnt out, not being able to do it. So what role can you play, whether you're a leader or not, in making this change happen? Is it making sure you join a call early so you can have a quick chat, a quick coffee with some of your hybrid colleagues? Is it making sure that when you do something within the office, it does work for everyone, whether they're in or not? And then what strengths do I and my team have that will help us move from thought to action? So we talk about individual strengths, knowing the strength within your team, knowing who's good at what makes someone happy that they're good at, what's a strength for them, and then how can they use that to help us move from thought to action? Looks like people are actually saying a lot more. So that's great. Let's have a read of some of those as we're going through. Yeah, we're all human, so we want to treat people as we want to be treated. That's really good. Yeah, kick things off? Sorry, Anne, I cut you off. What were you going to say?
No, not at all. I was reading and nodding and look at self-imposed boundaries on working patterns while being remote. Putting in place with your team and agreeing, hey, we're going to do this type of work together Monday and Wednesday, and we're going to get in the office and we're going to collaborate and communicate and do all those things that you do really well, and then we're going to focus and spend some time, and then we're going to come back and we're going to celebrate what strengths are you going to use to deliver those objectives. That's a really quick and easy way. So thank you, Noah. You put that in the comment that prompted those thoughts. There's loads there, and I think if you can approach, and maybe you kind of look at some of the other webinars that you'll be attending, some of the learning sessions that you've got going on, just thinking about what's the one thing that you're going to take away, and what's your role in that, and taking some ownership for it, but also then reflecting on those strengths. That's a really important way to create behavior change and to empower people to take action. So if you are struggling with managers, leaders, people who aren't making these changes that you've been, that human and a flow approach to work is really important. Maybe the strengths way is the quickest way for you.
And on the flip side, if you are a leader, if you've got too much on, if this seems like an absolute mountain to climb, just think of one thing you can do now. Just one thing that you can make an improvement, and then once you've got through that, you can think of another one, and just take these small steps to work through it. There's lots of takeaways that you could take from that, and there's some going to be more relevant than others. So what's going to work for you? What's going to work for your team? What's just that one thing you can do now that's going to make a change? Taking it from thought to action, using your strengths.
Yeah, and Julie's just put in the chat exactly what you've just said, Richard, as well. So there's obviously a lot there around drilling down and uncovering the why. I like that. Let me just quickly, while you maybe reflect on that a little bit, but let me just before we wrap up, so this is the final sort of slide that we've got here. There is an inclusivity paradox that you really need to be aware of when you're adopting these hybrid ways of working and creating a more human experience and creating flow within your teams. Those two things naturally celebrate and create more inclusive environments. They naturally foster the curiosity, the mindset, the appreciation, the celebration of diversity and uniqueness, the connecting as human beings together, but also not kind of creating blindness. It's the curiosity to go, well, tell me what's different about your experience. What's going on? How can we help in this team? The organization may have some practices, and that's fantastic, but you as a team, how can you all get together and support each other to create a more kind of inclusive and belonging workplace? Getting it right, we know that and some of this is taken from, actually I think all of it's taken from McKinsey's recent 2022 either diversity and inclusion or women in the workplace report. So looking at 71% of HR leaders say that remote work has really helped hire and retain kind of more diverse backgrounds. That's huge for a lot of people and a lot of organizations. That's amazing, and that's also inclusive of disabilities, where hybrid working models are really influencing the ability to work and be productive no matter what sort of health or disability or what experience that you're having, whether it's childcare or something else that may have otherwise limited your ability to work within a team. These are really, really positive things. I think getting it right, there's some recent kind of stats and data saying that those that are getting it right, about half your workforce is likely to stay. So 50%. That doesn't actually sound that high, but when you think that 30% would leave if you didn't have the option for hybrid working, that's quite amazing, really, when you think about it. And what I like, these other stats, so 7 times more likely to report satisfaction. So if you think about your attraction, 7 times more likely to report satisfaction means that they're probably going to be more positive to their friends and colleagues, maybe putting some happy posts on LinkedIn. That's a massive thing from a brand attraction perspective and to support your hiring. Also, a 90% increase in going out the way to help a colleague. That's quite powerful when you think that everyone is burning out and we're all trying to put a wellbeing strategy and a resilience strategy in place. Well, if you just get hybrid working to feel more inclusive and your ways of working to feel more inclusive, then 90% of people go out of the way to help a colleague and support a colleague. That's quite powerful. Getting it wrong is the flip side of the paradox. People are very, very sensitive to you getting this wrong. So it's really, really important that you get it right. And this is across younger employees, Black employees, kind of women, men, but women in particular, when you look at these reports, and employees of disability, all sorts of minority groups. Actually, when you look at the data, when you get it wrong, you have a massive impact on your diversity inclusion, but also the impact of people and having a sustainably great culture that people want to work and want to work for you and want to be a part of your organization. So the important thing here is that if we can work together to create a more human experience, and we can work together to create more opportunities for flow, to be celebrating each other's uniqueness and playing to each other's strengths, those are the two things that are going to help you get this right quickly, because you need to. That's kind of everything from us today. And yes, Diana, I will share the links to research. If you follow us on LinkedIn, we'll post it there, or I'll get something out to you. Does anyone have any other questions or thoughts before I sort of leave you with that image of skills that we need to invest in? Does anyone have any thoughts?
Give a couple of seconds to come through. Realize we've taken up a lot of your time today, and I really appreciate that. But if you've got the time to hang around for a couple of minutes and start asking us questions, please do. One last question. Do you think the energy crisis might tempt people back to work? So do you mean if you're in the office, you're not paying for your heating at home? That is a very interesting question. And it's going to come up, isn't it? It's going to be a driver for some people. Everyone's looking at the moment, whether they're immediately affected by inflation, energy, everyone's looking at changing their shop from Tesco's to Lidl, or just little things.
Yeah,
and
Julia, I think
pay for energy.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's right. I think that's a conversation that's going to come up more. I think also it depends on the travel to the office and how expensive that could potentially be. You know, a lot of organizations hiring from further afield, so travel is going to be more difficult. So it might even have the opposite effect.
My travel card used to be hundreds at one point. So being at home probably was, well, I don't know, it depends where all the energy prices go to. And again, so a lot of companies offer free meals, or they have a canteen with subsidized meals. I think that's probably going to be a big driver for some organizations getting people back into the building. Let's just hope they keep those benefits going.
Yeah, and Kirsty, you've made a really good point as well. Actually, a lot of you are making good points, but Kirsty, I've highlighted yours here. Just we know that there are many benefits of hybrid working, but how do businesses and managers tackle presenteeism and leavism, quiet quitting, quiet stewing, the kind of things that we were talking about earlier? If you have flow, in your team where everyone understands and they're clear on their outcomes, they're clear on how their unique strengths has a role to play to that, if they're aligned and there's clear mechanisms to measure the outcomes and the outputs rather than the time spent on the task and the inputs, if there's trust and human connection between the manager and the team, we find that presenteeism and leavism kind of reduces. We know that team performance increases about 36% if you're playing to strengths. So there's all of those really important kind of factors to that question, and actually points to some of the skills that you need to invest in, right? Honest conversations, challenging positively, making sure that we've got kind of strengths-based and outcome-based performance management, or performance motivation, as we call it at Bailey and French. So yeah, there's lots to be done there.
There is. I think a lot of it is making people feel valued, whether that be compensation, whether that be, as Ant was talking about, giving them clear targets that they can achieve. Brilliant. Thank you so much. I don't think we've ever had such good, well, not the one that I've been on, interaction and questions. So thank you so much.
Yeah, we've had more people on today, so it's obviously a really hot topic for you. We'll leave it a few more minutes. We are finished, so we've got nothing else. We've got nothing else for you. So if you want to jump off, please feel free to do so. It'd be great to hear from you on LinkedIn. It'd be great to hear some of your questions. We'll, as I say, follow up with some of those actions. But if you've got any other questions, if you want to post it now, or if you want to come off mute, you can do. Or if you want to post things directly to Richard or I over LinkedIn, thank you for spending the time with us. Really appreciate it. Hopefully useful. Hopefully there's some quick hints and tips for you to walk away in action now. So thank you.
Really good questions that I had to think about to answer, if not throw over to Anne. So yeah, really great. So yeah, a couple of people jumping off now. Thank you so much for giving us 45 minutes of your day, with how busy everyone seems to be at this season. Thank you.
For those who missed the beginning, yes, the recording will be available as well.